My name is Charlotte, and I've had 5 husbands. People usually pause when they hear that. Some out of curiosity, others out of judgment. I don't blame them. 5 sounds excessive when you say it out loud, but to me, it was never about collecting love stories. It was about learning who I was each time I tried to love. Now I'm 45, living by the sea in a quiet house where the windows rattle when the wind changes. I make coffee at dawn, write a little, walk barefoot along the shore. My life is small now, not empty, just mine. Each marriage taught me something, that love can be a flame and a shelter, that silence can hurt more than words, that passion isn't the same as peace, and that sometimes the truest way to love someone is to let them go before you both start breaking. For years, I thought I was chasing happiness. But looking back, I think I was just chasing understanding of love, of life, of myself. I've been the girl who waited by the door, the woman who left in the night, the lover who stayed too long, and the one who finally learned how to stay still. This isn't a story about failure. It's about becoming. Because every time my heart broke, something in me rebuilt stronger. Quieter, yes, but also freer. And if you asked me now whether I'd do it all again, I'd say yes. Every vow, every mistake, every ending. They brought me here. And here, finally, is enough. I was 18 when I first fell in love. The kind of love that makes you believe you're the only 2 people in the world who truly understand what love even means. His name was Jake. 19, guitar always in hand, dreams too big for our small town. He was chaos wrapped in charm, and I was young enough to think that meant passion. We met at a summer fair. He was sitting on the hood of his car, strumming a song and grinning like he already knew I'd stop to listen. When he asked my name, I told him. When he asked for my heart, I gave it without thinking. Within a month, I'd moved out of my parents' house and into his tiny apartment above a record shop. The rent was late. The walls smelled of smoke and rain. But we thought we were rich in love. We married that winter in a courthouse ceremony. No flowers, no family, just Jake, his guitar, and 2 witnesses who barely knew us. He kissed me in the parking lot and whispered, "You and me, Charlotte. Just wait. We'll make it out of this town and everyone will know our names." I wanted to believe him. So I did. Our love was fire, beautiful, bright, and exhausting. We fought almost as passionately as we kissed. About rent, about gigs, about the future. Jake would come home at 3 a.m., guitar slung over his shoulder, eyes still high from the stage lights. I'd be waiting in the kitchen, trying to keep dinner warm. "Did you even call?" I'd ask. He'd smirk, kiss my forehead, and say, "Babe, it's music. It doesn't follow a clock." Sometimes we'd argue until dawn, until one of us said something that couldn't be unsaid. And then in the morning he'd make coffee, sing me something soft, and I'd forgive him all over again. It was a cycle. Love, fight, forgive, repeat, until I couldn't tell if we were in love or just addicted to the noise we made together. One evening, he came home different. His eyes were glowing, his voice shaking with excitement. "They called me, Char," he shouted, grabbing me by the waist. "The band got invited to play on Rising Sound. It's a TV show in LA. This is it. This is the break we've been waiting for." I remember laughing through tears, hugging him, believing every word. We stayed up all night talking about what life would be like after. The tours, the songs, the way we'd tell this story to our kids someday. He left 2 days later with a single suitcase and his guitar. He kissed me at the door and said, "I'll call you after the show. Don't forget me, okay?" I smiled, as if I ever could. He never called. At first, I thought something had gone wrong. Then I saw his face, our face, on TV. He stood under bright lights, smiling that same wild smile, singing the song he'd once written for me. The crowd screamed his name. Mine he never mentioned. Jake got famous, briefly. A few interviews, 1-hit song, some magazine covers. Then it faded as fast as it came. Fame never loved him the way I did. I tried to move on. I found a job, went back to school, moved to another city. But he was everywhere. In the radio songs that sounded too much like him. in every man who smiled with the same half-daring look. He became my ghost, not haunting my nights, but my choices. Every time someone loved me quietly, I missed the noise. Every time someone treated me gently, I longed for the fire. It took years to realize I wasn't missing him. I was missing the version of myself that loved without fear. I never got to say goodbye. Not properly. He didn't call, didn't write, didn't send even one word after he left. Just silence, the kind that fills every empty space in your chest. I used to imagine him thinking of me between shows, maybe reaching for the phone and then stopping himself. But deep down, I knew he'd already moved on to a new dream, a new city, maybe a new girl who didn't ask him to come home early. Years later, when someone mentioned he'd lost his record deal and moved somewhere out west, I didn't feel pity. Just a kind of quiet relief that the world had finally stopped applauding him long enough for me to stop listening. Still, sometimes I'd wake up at night thinking I heard a guitar playing from another room. Soft, familiar, unfinished. I knew it was just memory, but I'd close my eyes and let it play. I wrote him a letter once. I never sent it. Jake, I saw you on TV. You looked exactly the same, older maybe, but still chasing that same fire. I thought if you ever got famous, I'd feel proud, but all I felt was distance. You were my first everything. The first man I loved, the first one I fought with until I couldn't breathe, the first one I lost without ever getting the chance to say goodbye. You taught me that love isn't supposed to burn forever. Sometimes it just lights the way to something else. Charlotte. I folded it carefully and hid it in a box of old photos. Every time I moved apartments, that box came with me. I never opened it, but I couldn't throw it away either. Time passed. I built a new life. I married again and again. Love changed shapes, wore new faces, spoke in softer tones, but Jake's ghost always lingered somewhere behind me, whispering from the corners of every new beginning. Don't forget me. And I didn't. Not really. Because one day, years later, fate decided I wasn't done with him. I saw him again, older, quieter, but unmistakably him. And that day, well, that's another story. Now, at 45, when I think of Jake, I don't feel the old ache anymore, just gratitude and a strange tenderness for the girl I was back then. He was the fire that burned too bright, and I was the one who stood too close. But maybe I had to get burned once to learn how to keep myself warm. After Jake, I promised myself I'd never fall for chaos again. I was 24, working as a waitress in a small cafe by the river, the kind of place where people came for routine, not romance. I wore the same faded apron every morning, served the same regulars, and tried to forget I'd ever been someone who believed in big, burning love. That's where I met Victor. He sat by the window every morning at exactly 8:30, same table, same order, black coffee and toast with honey. He was older than me by almost 10 years, clean-shaven, quiet, the kind of man who ironed his shirts and spoke softly to everyone. At first, he barely noticed me. Then one morning, he smiled and asked if I ever took a break. Not really, I said. The coffee machine doesn't like me to rest. He laughed, a deep, calm laugh. Then I'll bring you one, he said, standing up and walking to the counter like he owned the world. He came back with a coffee and set it in front of me. Your boss might not approve, he said, but I do. That was Victor, always composed, always in control, always ready to fix a problem before it even became one. He started coming more often, sometimes twice a day. He'd bring small things, a book he thought I'd like, a flower from his garden, a chocolate he said was too good to eat alone. I wasn't used to being treated so gently. Jake had made me feel alive. Victor made me feel safe. And at that point in my life, safety felt like love. He was an engineer, successful, with a quiet house on the edge of town and a car that smelled like leather and order. When he asked me out, I hesitated. Not because I didn't like him, but because I wasn't sure I knew how to love someone who didn't make my heart race in fear or excitement. But then he took my hand, and for the first time in years, I felt calm instead of dizzy. We started dating. Our evenings were spent at nice restaurants, our weekends on drives through the countryside. He didn't play guitar or write songs or make promises he couldn't keep. He just showed up every day. No surprises, no drama. And maybe that's why I said yes when he asked me to marry him. We married quietly, surrounded by his family and a few of my coworkers. I wore a cream dress, not white. I didn't believe in white anymore. Our life together was peaceful. Too peaceful, maybe. We had a routine that ran like clockwork. He'd wake up early, read the newspaper, and leave for work. I'd make breakfast, do errands, and sometimes meet friends for coffee. Victor liked things clean, predictable, and quiet. He'd thank me for cooking, kiss me goodnight, and never once raised his voice. For a while, I thought that was happiness, the absence of pain, the calm after the storm. But over time, the silence between us started to feel heavy. I missed conversation that wandered, laughter that spilled over. I missed being seen, not just looked at. One night at dinner, I asked, "Do you ever wonder what we'd talk about if we didn't talk about work or dinner plans?" He looked confused. Why would we talk about anything else? I smiled weakly, realizing I didn't have an answer that would make sense to him. Victor was a good man, the kind that everyone told me I was lucky to have. But sometimes good can still feel wrong. He loved me like a porcelain figure, carefully, politely, from a distance. I used to catch him watching me read or cook, and it felt like he was admiring something fragile, not loving something alive. I wanted to scream some days, not from anger, from the quiet. It was too much, too thick. One morning, as I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee, I thought of Jake. Not his face or his voice, but that wild feeling of being awake. I hadn't felt that in years. That scared me, because it meant the cage I'd walked into wasn't built by Victor. I'd built it myself, out of fear of ever getting hurt again. It wasn't a big fight or betrayal that ended us. It was smaller than that. One night, Victor came home from work, tired, briefcase in hand. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the TV but not watching it. He asked, "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Everything's fine." And that was the truth. Everything was fine. But fine had become unbearable. He kissed my forehead, told me about a new project, and I nodded at all the right moments. But inside, something in me had already packed a suitcase. I didn't plan it. I didn't write a list or make a map. I just woke up one night around 2 a.m., looked around our perfect, quiet house, and felt like I was watching someone else's life. Victor was asleep, his breathing steady, his hand resting on my pillow. I looked at him for a long time, trying to find the girl who'd said yes to this. She wasn't there anymore. I got dressed, packed a small bag, and left a note on the kitchen table. It only said one thing: I need to find where I belong, and I don't think it's here. Then I walked out, caught a bus before dawn, and watched the city fade through the window. I didn't cry. I just breathed, really breathed, for the first time in years. I don't blame Victor. He never lied, never hurt me, never asked for more than I could give. But that was the problem. He never asked enough. He loved peace, and I loved possibility. He wanted a life without storms. I wanted to stand in the rain. Sometimes safety feels like a blessing when you've known chaos. But sometimes, safety is just another word for a cage you built yourself. I used to think love was supposed to feel like calm. Now I know. It's supposed to make you feel alive. By the time I met Marcus, I'd already lived 2 lives. One that burned me, and one that put out the fire completely. I was 29, in New York for a writer's workshop, trying to figure out who I was after leaving Victor. I didn't have a plan, just a notebook, a rented room, and this wild hope that maybe my next chapter would finally make sense. Marcus was sitting in the back of the classroom the first day, paint-stained jeans, messy dark hair, and the kind of confidence that didn't need volume to be heard. When he introduced himself, he said, "I'm a painter. I don't really like writing, but I like people who bleed through words." Everyone laughed, except me. I just watched him. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that dangerous flutter again. He found me later that evening at a small cafe where the workshop students usually went. I was scribbling something in my notebook when he leaned over my table. "Do you ever stop writing?" he asked. "Do you ever stop watching?" I replied. He smiled, slow, amused, intrigued. Touché. We spent the night talking about everything: love, art, the city, the idea of living for something bigger than survival. He said he painted emotions he couldn't explain. I told him I wrote feelings I didn't understand. It felt like we were made of the same storm. Within a month, I moved into his loft in Brooklyn. A huge, chaotic space with cracked windows, unfinished canvases, and music always playing. We didn't have a bed for the first 2 weeks, just a mattress on the floor surrounded by paintbrushes and half-empty wine bottles. It wasn't stability, but it was alive. And I had missed that more than anything. We weren't supposed to get married. It just happened. We were in Las Vegas for an art festival, two drunk dreamers in love with the idea of each other. He pulled me into a small chapel with neon lights flickering, "Forever yours," and I said yes because it felt like a scene from a movie I didn't want to end. We laughed through the vows, kissed too hard, and signed papers neither of us would remember the next morning. Technically, we weren't even legally married. Something about missing documents and the wrong ID. But for a while, we acted like we were. We called each other husband and wife, even when we were arguing, which was often. Marcus was magnetic. People orbited him. He could walk into a room and have everyone leaning toward him without even trying. He painted like he was possessed, nights where he wouldn't sleep, just move from one canvas to another, covered in color and sweat. He made me feel everything: seen, inspired, alive, terrified. We loved like two thunderstorms colliding. We'd fight, scream, then end up tangled on the floor, gasping for breath and forgiveness. Our loft became a museum of contradictions, unfinished paintings, burned-out candles, and the constant hum of tension. He painted me dozens of times, never finishing any of them. "You keep changing," he said once. "I can't catch you." I laughed. Maybe you shouldn't try. But he did. He tried to own every version of me, the writer, the lover, the muse, until there was nothing left that felt like mine. We were both unfaithful, though neither of us said it out loud. It was part of the madness, part of the silent agreement we never made. He'd disappear for days, claiming artistic retreats, and I'd go out with friends who made me feel wanted again. We loved each other enough to stay, but hated each other enough to hurt. It was doomed, and we both knew it. But letting go of him felt like giving up on the wildest part of myself. He could make me cry and laugh in the same breath. He could make me feel like the center of the world, and then remind me I wasn't even the center of his own. The night everything ended, we were at one of his gallery openings. The place was crowded, the air thick with praise and wine. People kept complimenting the paintings, his paintings, and I kept hearing them say my name. Half the portraits were of me, distorted, fractured, beautiful, and broken. My face on the walls, my body turned into art, my soul pinned like an exhibit. At first I was proud. Then I heard one woman whisper, "She's his muse. He'd be nothing without her." Marcus saw my reaction. He didn't like it. Later that night, when the guests were gone and the lights dimmed, he turned to me with that dangerous quiet I'd learned to fear. "You enjoyed that," he said. "What?" "The attention. You loved hearing your name more than my work." I froze. "Marcus, those paintings are me. Of course people—" He cut me off. "You used me, Charlotte. You turned me into your next story. Every fight, every night, you were just collecting material." His words hit like glass. "That's not true." "Then tell me," he said, stepping closer. "What's your next book called? How to Ruin a Genius in 10 Easy Steps?" I wanted to hit him. I wanted to kiss him. Instead, I whispered, "You used me too." He didn't answer. He just walked out of the loft and didn't come back for days. When he did, we both knew it was over. He packed his paints. I packed my notebooks. We didn't say goodbye. There was nothing left to say. For months, I couldn't write. Every word felt stolen, every sentence too close to a wound that hadn't healed. I'd walk by art galleries and feel like someone was watching me from the walls. Marcus's name would pop up sometimes, a new exhibition, a scandal, a review calling him a tortured visionary. I stopped reading after that. He got everything he wanted: fame, recognition, chaos. I got silence, and maybe that was what I'd needed all along. Looking back now, I don't regret him. Marcus showed me a version of love that was electric and doomed, the kind that burns you, but also lights parts of you you didn't know existed. When two artists love each other, someone's heart always becomes the canvas, and in our case, both of ours did. He taught me that creation and destruction often share the same hands. That passion without peace is just another form of pain. Sometimes I still think of that night in Las Vegas. Neon lights, laughter, two dreamers promising forever to the wrong gods. Maybe we were never meant to last. Maybe we were just meant to inspire each other long enough to create something worth remembering. And we did. Even if all that's left are paintings that look like ghosts and stories that sound like goodbye. When I met Henry, I didn't believe in perfect love anymore. I had known chaos with Jake, fire with Marcus, and silence with Victor. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for rest. And Henry was rest. We met at a charity event my friend dragged me to. I didn't want to go. I was tired, lost, half convinced I'd run out of versions of myself to offer anyone. But Henry, he noticed me even when I wasn't trying to be noticed. He had kind eyes and a slow, warm voice. He asked about my writing and didn't interrupt when I said I hadn't written in a while. When I apologized for rambling, he smiled and said softly, "Don't be sorry, Lottie. You don't need to apologize for being interesting." That's what he called me from the start, Lottie. No one ever had before. It made me feel like I belonged to a softer world. With Henry, everything happened naturally, not rushed, not chaotic, just right. He was a doctor, steady and endlessly patient. When he proposed, it wasn't with fireworks or surprises, but with calm conviction. "You're my home, Lottie," he said. "I want to spend my life making sure you never forget that." We had the kind of wedding I never thought I'd have, the kind women secretly dream about but pretend they don't. White dress, a small church, my friends crying in the pews. Henry stood at the altar looking like safety personified. When the priest asked if I took this man, I said yes with tears in my eyes. Not because I was unsure, but because I'd never felt so certain. We danced until morning. For a while, it felt like every painful chapter before him had only existed to lead me to that day. Our life together was warm, peaceful, beautiful. Henry filled every corner of our home with laughter. He'd come home from long shifts at the hospital and still have the energy to cook dinner with me. When I burned the pasta, he said, "That's just extra flavor." When I couldn't sleep, he'd read medical articles out loud until I drifted off, a trick that worked surprisingly well. For the first time in my life, I felt completely safe. And that safety scared me, because deep down I kept wondering, what if I ruin this too? A year into our marriage, we decided to start a family. It felt natural. We had love, a home, stability. Henry's eyes would light up every time he saw a baby. I used to tease him that he'd be the kind of dad who buys a stroller before the baby even arrives. But months passed, and nothing happened. At first, we laughed about it. "We just need practice," he'd say with that easy smile. But after a year, laughter turned into worry. Henry, being a doctor, suggested checkups. "Just to be sure." I agreed. I wasn't worried, not really, until I was. The tests came back slowly, one appointment after another. Henry was with me through all of them, holding my hand, reassuring me, making every cold waiting room feel a little less sterile. Until the day the doctor said it plainly, "Charlotte, it's very unlikely you'll be able to conceive naturally." I remember looking at Henry first, not the doctor. He didn't flinch, he just squeezed my hand and said, "We'll figure it out, Lottie." But I saw it, the flicker in his eyes. Not disappointment in me, but grief for the dream he'd quietly carried his whole life. Henry refused to give up. He spent weeks researching treatments, specialists, alternative options. He scheduled new appointments, arranged second opinions, even drove me to every test himself. He wanted to heal me. That's what Henry did. He healed. But the more he tried, the more I understood something he couldn't say. He wanted to be a father more than he wanted to admit. He never pressured me, never said it out loud, but it lived between us. In the way his voice softened when he saw a child, in the way he turned away when parents walked past us holding hands with their little ones. And it broke me, because I loved him enough to see the truth he couldn't speak. One evening, Henry came home later than usual. I was sitting on the couch, half reading, half thinking. He smiled, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "We'll try a new specialist next month. I found someone in New York who's had amazing results." I nodded, smiled, and felt something inside me crack. I didn't want to try anymore, not because I didn't want him to have what he dreamed of, but because I knew I couldn't give it to him. Later that night, unable to sleep, I walked out into the city. I ended up in a small, dimly lit bar, one of those places people go when they don't want to be found. And that's where I saw him. Jake. He was older, thinner, sitting on a small stage with his guitar. The same voice, softer now, but still unmistakably his. When he saw me after the set, he froze, then smiled. "Charlotte," he said quietly. "Or should I say Mrs. something now?" "Mrs. Bennett," I said, "for now." He laughed, a little sad, a little nostalgic. We talked for hours about nothing and everything. His short-lived fame, my quiet life, the strange way time blurs old pain. And then we stopped talking. The silence between us said everything. We didn't plan it. We didn't mean for it to happen. But when he kissed me, I didn't pull away. It wasn't about love. It was about closure. We spent the night together, and by morning, the weight I'd carried for years felt lighter. I left before he woke up. When I got home, I opened the drawer where I'd kept that old letter to him, the one I'd written years ago and never sent. I read it one last time, smiled, and burned it in the sink. It was finally over. That night, Henry came home with flowers. Lilies, my favorite. "For my brave girl," he said, smiling. "We'll figure this out, Lottie. One step at a time." I couldn't do it anymore. I looked at him, the man who loved me more than I ever thought I'd deserve, and said quietly, "Henry, there's something you need to know." He frowned. "What's wrong, Lottie?" "I made a mistake," I said. "I slept with someone." The words tasted like blood. He stared at me, not angry, just stunned. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, he whispered, "Why?" I swallowed. "Because you deserve to have the life you dreamed of. You deserve to be a father, and I couldn't make you walk away, so I made it impossible for you to stay." He shook his head. "Lottie." I stepped closer, tears in my eyes. "Please don't hate me, just go. Live the life you were meant to live." Henry didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just nodded slowly, packed a small bag, and kissed my forehead one last time. "I'll always love you, Lottie," he whispered. And then he walked out the door. By the time I met Gabriel, I wasn't searching for love anymore. Not in others, not even in myself. I was 41, living in a small apartment by the sea, working as a freelance editor, and finally learning how to enjoy silence without fearing it. My life was small, simple, and quiet. And after everything that came before, quiet felt like a luxury. I'd stopped expecting anything from the world. That's probably why it gave me him. We met at a friend's book club, a casual gathering that smelled of wine, paper, and middle-aged contentment. He arrived late, carrying a tray of pastries and an apology. "Sorry," he said, smiling. "I burnt the first batch." I remember laughing, not because it was funny, but because something about him felt familiar. Not like déjà vu, but like recognition. He looked at me the same way I imagine I looked at Henry the first time, softly, curiously, without demand. His name was Gabriel. He was a literature professor who'd once wanted to be a poet, divorced, no kids. He said it lightly, like a fact he'd already made peace with. We talked that evening more than anyone else in the room. About the book, yes, but also about life, about the quiet heartbreaks that don't make good stories, about how grief and growth sometimes sound the same. When I got home, I realized I hadn't thought about the past the whole time we were together. That hadn't happened in years. Gabriel didn't chase. He simply appeared, consistently, in text messages about new books, in coffee shop conversations, in slow walks that became habits. He never asked for more than I could give, but somehow I found myself giving more anyway. When he called me Charlotte, it sounded like a name I'd earned, not one I was trying to grow into or escape from. Our relationship unfolded slowly, like a story that finally stopped rushing to reach the ending. We didn't have fireworks or grand declarations. What we had was laughter over burnt pancakes, shared mornings with the newspaper, and the comfort of being fully known. I once told him, half joking, "I've had every kind of love, Gabriel. Wild, safe, broken, healing. What's left?" He smiled, brushing my hair behind my ear. "Peace, Charlotte. Maybe peace." Gabriel wasn't perfect. He was stubborn, quiet when he should have spoken, sometimes too logical for someone who taught poetry. But he had this rare ability to make me look at myself without fear. He didn't fix me. He reflected me. When I got insecure about my past, he'd say, "You talk about your life like it's a tragedy, Charlotte, but all I see is someone who kept showing up." And that was the first time I realized, maybe survival is a kind of triumph too. We never married. Neither of us needed another ceremony to prove something. We just lived together, shared mornings and seasons, learned how to hold space for each other's silence. Sometimes on rainy days, he'd read aloud while I edited his old poetry drafts. "Do you ever regret not publishing these?" I asked once. "No," he said. "Some things are meant to be written only for the person who reads them first." "And who's that?" I teased. He smiled. "You, apparently." That's how Gabriel loved, quietly, deeply, without performance. One night, I couldn't sleep. The ocean outside our window was loud, wild, and for some reason, I started thinking of all the people I'd loved. Jake, Victor, Marcus, Henry. Each one a chapter, each one a lesson. I got out of bed, took a notebook, and began to write. To every man who loved me when I didn't love myself, thank you. To the one who left without saying goodbye, you taught me that love needs space to breathe. To the one who stayed too quietly, you showed me the value of my own voice. To the one who burned with me, you proved that beauty can come from chaos. To the one who called me Lottie, you reminded me that letting go can be an act of love too. And to the one who never asked me to be more than I am, thank you for simply seeing me. I closed the notebook and felt something I hadn't in years. Stillness. For the first time, I didn't feel haunted by the past. I felt whole. One evening, Gabriel and I sat on the beach, watching the sun sink into the horizon. He took my hand and said, "You know, you've lived more lives than most people do in one lifetime." I laughed. And yet, I ended up right where I started, by the sea, writing stories no one will ever read. He looked at me, his eyes soft. "Maybe you were never supposed to be saved, Charlotte. Maybe you were just supposed to understand yourself." And I realized he was right. For so many years, I'd tried to become someone else. The muse, the wife, the savior, the healed woman. But sitting there holding his hand, I finally felt like myself. No ghosts, no guilt, just me. Gabriel didn't teach me to love him. He taught me to love myself again. He was the mirror I didn't know I needed. The kind that didn't distort, didn't judge, just reflected truth. Jake gave me passion. Victor gave me safety. Marcus gave me creation. Henry gave me kindness, but Gabriel gave me peace. And peace, I've learned, is not the absence of love. It's the love that stays when everything else fades. Now, at 45, I sometimes sit by the sea and reread old pages, fragments of who I was. Each story still hurts in small ways, but I don't regret a single one. Because every man I loved helped me write the woman I became. And if anyone asked me now what I've learned from 5 husbands and 1 quiet life, I'd say this. Love doesn't always last forever, but it always leaves something behind. A lesson, a scar, a song. And sometimes that's enough. Gabriel would probably smile at that, pour me a glass of wine, and say, "Finally sounds like you finished the story, Charlotte." Sometimes, when the evening light turns gold and the sea grows quiet, I find myself thinking about them. Not with regret, just a soft curiosity, the kind that comes when you finally stop running from your own story. 5 men, 5 lives, 5 versions of me. Each one still lives somewhere in my memory, in a song, a scent, a street I once walked down holding someone's hand. People often ask me who my greatest love was, and I never know what to say. Was it the first, when love was pure, untamed, and foolishly certain? Or the one who gave me comfort, a home, and silence that felt like safety? Was it the man who painted me into his world and made me feel like art, even when it hurt? Or the one who called me Lottie and tried to heal me with kindness until I realized love can't fix what it doesn't understand? Or maybe it was the last, the quiet soul who saw me clearly, without expectation, and loved me without needing to be needed. Every time I try to choose, I change my mind. Maybe that's the truth of it, that love isn't meant to be measured or ranked. Maybe every person we've ever loved takes a small piece of us, and together, they form the whole. I like to think that's what happened to me, that I was never meant to find one great love, but to live many, each one shaping me into the woman who finally learned to sit alone without feeling lonely. So no, I don't know who my biggest love was, but I do know who I became because of them. And that, I think, is enough.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and explore our channel for more love, betrayal, and redemption tales.